Hey guys, what's going on? So we're going to see how this works with the whole video thing. The painless wiring harness kit got here today for the blue Malibu that had the little electrical issues in it. And I've already taken out the box. I don't generally use them and leave them alone. I reroute everything so that it looks a little bit better. On this vehicle, it was already a custom wire, so they had routed wires inside the car instead of across the firewall. They brought them on the inside of the firewall, which is what I like to do. And then they drop them out right above the starter motor. That's where you get your power source, your starter exciter wire, and then you also run the wires up from there to run everything on the block, on the engine block. That way there's no wires jumping from the wheel wells over to the engine. It looks clean. And then the lighting harness, you run it, obviously to the left and up, hide it behind the wheel well. So that's what we're going to do. I generally like to hang the harness up someplace that is up a little bit higher that I can look at it. And then you just have to go through, cut their zip ties off, because they design stuff, everything to go out the driver's side of the firewall of the car and then go across the firewall and go down. We're not going to go out that way, so we're going to isolate a couple things. Everything that goes to the rear of the car is still the same. I generally like to run a couple of extra wires to the rear, just in case the customer decides to add something. I'll always run the provisions for air conditioning, power windows, power door locks, because you can use that same circuit if you add stereo or an alarm or something. Like you just grab the circuits that are already there. One of the reasons I like to use painless is because they have silk screen on all the wires. They mark exactly what they do. So if this guy sells a car to somebody out of state, they don't have to go find an electrician to fix any issue if they decide to change something. Anybody can take the shielding off of it and look at it and see exactly what each wire does, if they don't already know. The amount of time you spend setting it up now will save you, twice that amount of time under the dashboard pulling all the wires. I usually just coil them up like you saw me do here, and just do one little loop. Don't have to go crazy. Otherwise, you end up tying it in a knot. The two long harnesses are obviously the tail light, brake light sender, reverse lights, gas gauge, all that goes to the rear, and then headlight, left and right blinker, and horn up in the front, and then there's an AC trigger wire. It's the right here with the white tracer. So now if a customer had brought me this car and it had never had wires in it, I generally tell them to fill all the holes in the firewall and make my own holes. So this is where I go in there now before I put the fuse box in there, and I punch a hole behind the distributor or just below the distributor a little bit to the right. That way the harness can go through the firewall in an inconspicuous spot, drop down to the starter, go up to the distributor, over to the coil, up to the choke, back to the alternator, all real clean and low and inconspicuous. And then the other one will come out behind the fuse box, left upper firewall on the inside, and go right through the wheel well. I'll drill the hole that's not visible from the engine compartment and go feed the back of the headlights and everything. So since this already has it all done, it had a wiring harness in there before, now we're ready to put this thing in. Lighting harness. So the first thing I want to do is run the front lighting harness through the firewall and get it out of the way. I've seen a lot of people wire cars and they start at all four corners of the car, install the harness and route everything and pull it all into the dashboard.
and then lay under the dashboard for 2 days, tying it all into the fuse box. If that's how you were taught and you pull it off, good for you. But yeah, I don't want to spend that much time upside down under the dashboard. So I'll start at the dash. As long as I have enough wire, route it out from the middle, from the fuse box location. All the corners, and then I could just sit around on a brake cart and scoot around the car, take off tail light lenses, and stuff you have to do anyway if you do it the other way. But I'll be more comfortable. Alright, so that one's done through. The other long harness is the one that goes to the rear of the car. It's for the brake lights and tail lights, blinkers, gas gauge, reverse lights, and I generally like to run a constant power fused power source back there for a trunk light. You'd be surprised how many customers have asked me after it was all said and done, oh, can I get a trunk light installed? Another thing too is don't be afraid of leaving a little bit of wire, a little extra wire to stop you from having to pull on everything. I've seen people pull stuff together, mount the fuse box and get out there and just yank on it to get it as tight as possible. And honestly, if I want to work on this fuse box in the future and I have 3 inches of extra wire right there where I can actually unbolt it from the panel, flip it around and look at the back of it, I'm a little happier than if it's yanked so tight that you can't do anything. Okay, so that's where we're at. Fuse box hanging under there, headlight harness pulled through, other harnesses in the basic direction of where they're going. Then you just kind of fine tune it from there. And let me pull some wires and I'll get back to recording. Okay, so here's the end of day one. Fuse box is mounted. Wire is roughly pulled to where it's supposed to be. This is the ignition switch, headlight switch, that's the turn indicator switch, which will be going to that older plug right there. This is the combo switches, cigarette lighter, all that good stuff. The headlight harness is going through the firewall right there, and then this goes to the dimmer switch, the high beam, low beam. Orange and white goes to the brake light switch, and then this big harness, it goes underneath everything and goes through the hole in the firewall. That's the rear harness. I just coil it up and hang it on the blinker or on the window wing. And then this is the harness that's going to be pulling power for the inside of the car coming through the firewall here. This is our right headlight, turn indicator, horn, dimmer, the lighting harness for the other side. Coiled up and just hanging basically in the rough area where it's going to be. I'll put heat shrink on all these, run it through the tubing, hide it all, run it underneath the core support so it's not visible. And that's about it. I'm going to put heat shrink and conduit over that, like a shielding, and then probably fill both those up with silicone because they need to be sealed. And obviously nothing will be laying on the headers. I'm going to reroute that starter wire, the battery wire. It's in a bad location.